The wine glass slipped from my hand, its fragile crystal shattering against the cold marble floor. In that instant the room fell silent, every eye locked onto the broken fragments. My wife's sister stood there, trembling with barely contained fury. Her finger, rigid and accusatory, pointed at me like the barrel of a gun. "Enjoy your last party, thief," she spat, her words slicing through the tension like a blade. The room seemed to collapse in on itself. A second later, the sound of flesh meeting flesh rang out, sharp and unforgiving. My wife's slap burned against my cheek, not just a physical sting but something deeper, something that scorched my very soul. Her eyes were filled with venom, tears threatening but never quite falling, never brave enough to break free. "Return the money and get out," she hissed, her voice trembling with anger and something else, something darker. I stood still, not moving, not speaking, not yet. Because sometimes, a snake coils back in silence, patient and waiting, until the moment arrives to strike. We had built everything together. Or so I had believed. I remembered those nights, late and quiet, when we had nothing but each other. My wife, asleep on my chest, her dreams filled with the future we had envisioned, one we would carve out of the nothingness we came from. When I finally struck gold with my tech startup, when it sold for millions, I thought I was lifting us both into a life of luxury and comfort. Family gatherings, expensive gifts, trust, love, everything I had worked for, everything I had hoped for, had been bought and paid for in blood, sweat, and belief. Or so I thought. But belief, I came to realize, is a currency that's all too easily counterfeited. The signs were subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a nervous glance between my wife and her sister, an exchange of looks that quickly turned into nothing when I entered the room. There were sudden errors in the bank statements, mistakes that were explained away with shrugs and dismissive words. Whispers fell silent the moment I walked through a doorway, and I began to feel the weight of something ominous in the air. Then the unthinkable happened. $200,000 vanished from our joint accounts, and the realization struck me like a blade between the ribs. But confronting them, challenging them in anger, would have been a foolish move. No. I needed something stronger than outrage. I needed certainty. I needed leverage. So, I bided my time, a ghost among them, hiding behind forced smiles and carefully measured words. Pain had sharpened my mind into a weapon. I no longer saw them as family. I saw them as enemies. I began my work in the shadows, quietly reinstating the security cameras in my home office. Cameras that had been mysteriously disabled months before. I mirrored every bank transaction, rigging a hidden account to capture every transfer, every deposit, every withdrawal. I watched, waited, and collected. Within weeks, the truth was revealed, spilling out in a torrent of betrayal. Not just my wife but her entire family had conspired against me. They had siphoned my success, laundering the stolen money through fake businesses, ghost invoices and shell accounts. And worse still, they had planned this downfall, this orchestrated theater of accusation and humiliation. The dinner, the false accusations, the slap, all of it had been carefully arranged. They needed me out. Disgraced. Isolated. They needed me broken to finalize their theft without resistance. But they had miscalculated. They thought I would shatter, that I would crumble under the weight of their lies. Instead, I smiled in the ruins of everything I had known. The night before the dinner, I finished my work. Every piece of evidence was gathered. Bank records, hidden camera footage, text messages that mapped out their conspiracy with chilling precision. I compiled it all into a cold, unflinching dossier. I was no longer the man they thought I was. I was the man who would reclaim everything they had stolen. I made a quiet visit to our family attorney, the kind of man who had always been on the periphery of our lives, never quite part of the chaos that swirled beneath our seemingly perfect existence. It turned out that betrayal, no matter how carefully hidden, always leaves fingerprints. Signature forgeries. Falsified contracts. Doctoring of records. A mountain of crimes, each one a felony, meticulously wrapped in a package that was ready for delivery. A single move would not be enough to expose them all. No, I would erase them. At the dinner, still reeling from the humiliation they had publicly crafted, I raised my eyes slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of silence hang heavy in the air. The room was suffocating with anticipation, everyone leaning forward, waiting for the breakdown they had planned for me, hoping to watch me collapse under their lies. Instead, I gave them nothing but silence. I turned to the butler, a loyal man I had once saved from financial ruin, and with a voice as cold as steel, I said, "Play it." The hidden speakers crackled to life and the room froze. My wife's voice filled the air, her own voice, unmistakable, cruel, mocking me. She had plotted every lie, every theft, every betrayal. Her sister's laughter followed, sharp and triumphant, as though this had all been a game. And then her father's voice, rough and calculating, promised lawyers, judges, and the media would never believe me over them. The color drained from their faces. I watched as my wife staggered backward as if the words themselves had struck her. Her mouth opened and closed, but there was nothing, no defense, no escape. I stepped forward, savoring the devastation. I had prepared for this moment with the precision of a surgeon. I wired the evidence to every major news outlet an hour ago. I said each word a scalpel slicing through the air. And the police, I whispered, calm but lethal. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Panic exploded around the table. Chairs toppled. Voices broke into desperate, high-pitched cries of disbelief. "This isn't happening." My wife's father shouted, veins bulging in his neck as his fury boiled over. I leaned in close to my wife, the woman I had once loved with a fierce devotion, and whispered, "Enjoy your last party." Her knees buckled, the force of the truth sinking into her like a stone dropped into water. The red and blue lights from the police cars bled through the windows, casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving glow. Within minutes, they were arrested, their wealth and power crumbling beneath the weight of their own treachery. Charges that would take decades to crawl out from under, if they ever did. Accounts were frozen. Assets seized. Everything they had stolen, gone. Their reputations shattered into ash, scattered across the public stage for all to see. As for me, I walked out of that house without a single glance back, stepping into the cool night air. Free. Alive. Untouchable. My hands were steady, my heart cold, but for the first time in years, I allowed myself a real smile, a dangerous, triumphant smile. Betrayal had tried to break me. Instead, it had forged me into something unstoppable. And when the wolves think they've cornered you, when they believe they've finally won, smile and show them just how wrong they were.